Off the coast of India, sonar screens lit up with something impossible. Streets, walls, tools, 120 feet under the sea. This might be the oldest city on Earth, or the ocean's greatest illusion. Picture a city twice as old as the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than writing itself. Now picture it at the bottom of the sea, in water so murky divers can barely see their own hands. That is exactly what one team of scientists believes they found. So tonight, we do what detectives do. We put the evidence on the table, piece by piece, and we let it speak. But fair warning, this case will not end where you expect. Because whether or not this city is real, it drags us to something science has already proven: whole drowned worlds, resting quietly under the waves. Two things to hold on to. First, one piece of evidence decides this entire case, and it is not what you think. And second, the detail everyone misses, hiding in plain sight at the end of the Ice Age. Rewind to the winter of 2000. The Gulf of Khambhat, off India's northwest coast. A government science team is running routine scans, checking pollution on the seabed. Nobody is looking for history. Then the sonar starts drawing pictures. Long, straight lines, sharp corners, huge rectangles, laid out in rows, like the foundations of buildings along the banks of ancient, buried rivers. The patterns stretch for miles. And rivers are exactly where cities grow. When India's own science minister announced it to the world, he didn't whisper. He called it the remains of a vast ancient settlement. And then came the number that set everything on fire. Material pulled from that seabed was lab dated to roughly 9,500 years old. Let that sink in. The pyramids? About 4,500 years. Stonehenge? 5,000. Even the mighty cities of the Indus Valley, the ones we investigated in Case File 5, came thousands of years later. If this date belongs to a city, history's first chapter is underwater. So what exactly is in the evidence basket? The team lowered dredges, giant scoops, and pulled up what they called artifacts. Pieces of worked wood, stone objects shaped like tools, beads, fragments they identified as pottery, and the star exhibit, that piece of wood. Two separate Indian labs dated it. One said around 9,200 years old, the other 9,500. On the sonar maps, they traced what they described as a paved causeway, house basements, even a great bath. Echoes of the Indus cities, but ages earlier. Put it all together, and you have the outline of a stunning story. A river valley civilization older than anything in the books, swallowed by the rising sea at the end of the Ice Age. It is a beautiful theory. There's just one problem. Actually, three. Problem 1. Everything was dredged, scooped blind from the seabed, not excavated layer by careful layer. Which means nobody can prove which object came from where. Problem 2. The water itself. The Gulf of Khambhat has some of the fiercest tides on the planet. Currents strong enough to drag objects for miles, and to carve the seafloor into long, straight channels that can mimic ruined streets on a sonar screen. And problem 3. The star exhibit. The wood. Skeptics point out that a date on wood proves only one thing: an old tree. Ancient rivers could have carried it there and buried it long before any human hands touched that ground. And hanging over it all, in more than 20 years, not one peer-reviewed excavation of this site has ever been published. So the case stalls. One camp sees the oldest city on Earth. The other sees nature playing tricks. And for 20 years, that's where this file sat, until you look at the one detail everyone misses. This is where the case file gets bigger than one city. So pull up a chair, hit subscribe, and let's follow the water. Here's the detail everyone misses. 20,000 years ago, in the deep freeze of the Ice Age, the ocean was about 400 feet lower than it is today. For 100 feet, every coastline you know is new. Back then, the best land on Earth, flat, warm, wrapped around rivers, full of fish, was coastal plain that is now seabed. Then the world warmed. The great ice sheets let go, and over thousands of years, the sea took back land the size of continents. In Southeast Asia, a drowned plain the size of a subcontinent now sleeps under shallow sea. The Persian Gulf? At the height of the Ice Age, it wasn't a gulf at all. It was a green river valley. And at times, the water rose fast enough to swallow a shoreline within living memory. Beaches your great-grandparents walked, gone by the time you were old. Now think like a detective. Where did early people love to live? By the water. So where are their oldest homes today? Under it. That's the flip. We shouldn't be asking if there are settlements under the sea. We should be asking how many. And here's the part that never makes the headlines. We've already found them. Off the coast of Israel, under about 30 feet of calm blue water, sits Atlit, a village 9,000 years old. Not a maybe, a confirmed site, excavated by divers for decades. Stone-lined water wells, among the oldest ever found. House foundations, olive pits from ancient meals, and at its heart, a circle of standing stones, raised around what was once a freshwater spring. And here's the detail that makes it human. As the sea crept closer, the villagers rebuilt the stone lining of their well, again and again, fighting to keep the salt out of their drinking water. They stayed for as long as staying was possible. Off Greece, Pavlopetri, a 5,000-year-old town so complete you can still trace its streets and doorways in the sand. In the Baltic Sea, a kilometer-long stone wall laid down by Stone Age hunters more than 10,000 years ago, then swallowed by the rising water. Off Australia, ancient tool sites from thousands of years before the sea moved in. Underwater settlements aren't a fantasy. They are a fact of archaeology. The only argument is about which claims make the list. Which brings us to the biggest, drowned world of them all. Between Britain and Europe, under the grey North Sea, lies an entire lost country. Scientists call it Doggerland. 10,000 years ago it was dry land. Rivers, hills, marshes, forests, a home for thousands of people. Britain wasn't an island. It was a peninsula, and we know Doggerland was inhabited because the sea keeps handing back the case files. Fishing boats there have been dredging up stone tools and carved harpoon points for over a century. Mammoth tusks, traces of the lions that once hunted there. Even a piece of a Neanderthal skull has come up from that seabed. Scientists have now used energy company survey data to map its ghost rivers and valleys, a drowned map of a drowned nation. And its ending? For thousands of years the water crept in, drop by drop, shrinking the plain to islands. Then, about 8,200 years ago, a colossal undersea landslide off Norway sent a huge surge of ocean across what was left. And within a few more lifetimes, the rising sea finished the job. Silence. The North Sea closed over an entire world. That's not a theory. That's the accepted history of Europe. So now we can finally judge the Gulf of Khambhat like detectives, with the whole board in view. Could a 9,500-year-old settlement exist on land that's now seabed? Yes. The sea levels say that land was dry once, and sites like Atlit prove people built villages on coasts exactly that long ago. Is Khambhat proven? No. And honesty is the whole point of this channel. The finds were dredged, not excavated. The straight lines on Sonar could be the work of currents. The famous wood could be a drifted tree. No stratified dig has ever confirmed a floor, a wall, a hearth in place. Most archaeologists file it under unproven, and they're right too. But here's what's changed. India's own coastline keeps whispering. Just off Dvarka, a city wrapped in ancient legends of being swallowed by the sea, divers have mapped real submerged walls and dozens of stone anchors. Younger than Khambhat's claim, yes. Still proof that this coast hides flooded chapters. And around the world, from the Black Sea to the Baltic, story after story of great floods sits uncomfortably close to real, datable drowning events. Maybe those old stories aren't fairy tales. Maybe they're memories with the dates worn off. So the verdict on Khambhat, case open, not solved, not closed, waiting for the one thing that settles everything, a real excavation, layer by layer, in the dark water. And the tools to do it finally exist. Robot mappers, sub-bottom scanners, divers guided by sonar that can see through mud. Sooner or later, someone will dig. And when they do, this channel will be waiting. So maybe we've been reading the map of history wrong. We keep looking for our beginnings on dry land, in deserts, in jungles, on mountains. But for most of the human story, the front porch of the world was a coastline that no longer exists. The end of the Ice Age didn't just melt ice. It quietly closed the door on humanity's first neighborhoods and locked them in the world's largest vault. And here's the hopeful part. The ocean doesn't destroy history. Cold, dark, still water is one of the best museums there is. Atlit kept its wells for 9,000 years. Doggerland kept its rivers. Somewhere down there, The rest of our first chapter is holding its breath, waiting for sonar, divers, and stubborn scientists to find it. The vanished are rarely erased. They're just filed somewhere we haven't looked. If you believe a mystery deserves evidence, not just a good story, then you're one of us. Tell me in the comments which drowned world we should open next, Doggerland's lost rivers, or the sunken plains of Asia. And subscribe to Vanished so you never miss a case file. Because the next one is already open. Another place, another disappearance, another trail gone quiet. The case continues, right here.